All right, what's up, everybody? Good to see all of you all. We are back. We are back. This is Callings and Careers, and man, it's been a little bit since we've been on. We've had some natural elements, natural disasters. I guess is a good way to say that. I don't want to use the word natural disaster, but that is what it is. It is what it is. But we're glad to be back on Callings and Careers, and I'm glad to be back with my co-host. What's up, Jessica?
Hello. I'm so glad to be back and get back into the flow and talk about all things callings and careers. I'm Jessica Canty. I am your life and career strategist. I love helping millennial moms who want to have fulfilling careers. And this is a wonderful conversation to have those high achieving careers.
There you go. And I'm Christopher Harris. You can find me there. Jessica's website was just up. And all things ministry, wisdom, leadership, and life, family and marriage, and all those kinds of things. You can also find me at diversechurchjobs.com, where we're helping people find and connect with incredible ministry opportunities across the country and in some cases the world. And so we're glad to be back with Callings and Careers. Our goal is to help you discover your calling and develop in your career. And if you are a person of faith, we believe that you do not have to turn your faith off in the workplace, that in fact, your faith can flourish in the workplace. And that's what our commitment is to help you do that, to have some discussions about that. And that's what we've been doing, man. The last year and a half, 2 years, Jessica and I have jumped on here live with you all. We're on multiple platforms here today. And so we are excited to be able to come in and help some more people. We've talked about salary negotiation before. We've talked about transferable skills. We've talked about your personal board of directors. So many things that we've talked about to help you kind of navigate what to do and how to flourish in the workplace, especially if you're in a situation where you're in some sort of transition or change, or you may be working in a hostile work environment. We believe that there is wisdom that you can glean to be able to grow in that. So, yeah. And let me just say, I'm gonna throw my co-host under the bus, y'all, in front of everybody. Y'all came to my home state, 30 minutes away, and didn't say anything. I'm just gonna throw that out there. I'm just gonna throw that out there.
We starting off. The shots are fired.
Not fired. This is a big old oak tree that just threw all that shade, all of that. Me and my wife didn't know nothing about her coming 30 minutes away. And she was here for 4 days and didn't say a word. I'm just saying. But it's all good. Jessica, how you doing? How's life?
Shady. It is. Life is great. Life is great. And I'm excited to be able to talk about when life isn't great. And I know that's kind of weird to say, but I think it's important for us to have those honest conversations. So when you said the topic for today, I'm like ecstatic about it, and I will recover. My mental health will recover from the shade and the shots thrown. Because I promise, the next time I come on that sunny state, I'm gonna pull up in front of y'all house. How about that?
Listen. As they used to say in the country, the doors swing on welcome hinges. How about that? Yeah.
Absolutely.
So let's jump into it, because we got a lot, I think, to cover. And here's the reality. The reality is that stress is real, y'all. Stress is real. And today we actually want to talk a little bit about, what does it mean to navigate stress in your life, stress in the workplace, stress in your career, stress in culture. And at the time of this recording, we really about a week and a half removed, at least locally here in the state of Florida. We have survived 2 hurricanes in 13 days, which is significant, right? We have other folks that are in other places that may be watching or listening to this at some point, either live now or later on. Wildfires in California, tornadoes and earthquakes in other places. We'll have here in just a few months, many of our northern states that will deal with inclement weather, streets being shut down or being snowed in. All of those things can trigger stress. Stress is the reality of life. We would be negligent if we didn't also acknowledge that the election and the election process adds some level of stress to some people. And Emotions are like sky high, right? Our polarized opinions and approaches are sky high. My prayer, my hope is that after the election, that everything just simmers down and calms down, because things are just at a fever pitch right now. Um, if you read the news and you see what's happening with companies, folks are laying folks off. You've got work from home policies that are changing. You've got lots of things happening with our schools, school safety. So stress is a reality. It's a reality. I don't know, just anything you would add to that list, or things that kind of come to top of
Oh,
mind for you?
absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, it's stress and it's complex because we came out of several years of stress. So here's the pandemic, and on the other side of the pandemic, we have natural disasters, highly charged political season, and the the economy is still rebounding, and so is the job market as well. I mean, even prior to the pandemic, our country was experiencing a mental health crisis. You could tell that by if you just go into any CVS, Walgreens, Target, whatever your local pharmacy is, there's whole aisles of creams and powders and lotions and oils all about stress. So
Wow.
if you're stressed, there's a drink, there's all these conversations happening because at least marketing is understanding that our country is experiencing a mental health crisis. And it's most easily understood through the word stress. So most
Mm,
people can get stressed, but they don't understand all the implications. So I'm glad we're having this in-depth conversation.
yeah. Yeah. I love that you pointed that out in terms of the fact that stress can be complex. And I think a
Mhm.
little bit of what we'll deal with today is that stress impacts every facet of your life. That
Oh,
there's not
absolutely.
one aspect of your life that it doesn't impact or affect. And we're talking to adults today that are in the workplace and talking about this from a career perspective, callings and careers. That's what we're focused on. But you said something before we went live today that I thought would be very appropriate to even mention about stress and young adults and children. So what just state for everybody here, like publicly, what you were sharing with me before we came
Mhm.
online.
Oh, absolutely. There's a lot of research that has been done, and most specifically, it's a study called the ACEs study, the Adverse Childhood Experiences Study. And in this study and other studies like it, scientists have followed what happens to children when they experience a lot of adverse experiences in their childhood. So their minds and their bodies are still growing and developing. The human brain isn't fully developed till they're 25. And what
Mm,
happens in those critical development years shapes their worldview. It also impacts their body. So we're talking about it can stunt their growth. It can also impact, the weight they gain, the weight they lose. And so it's incredibly important for us to have this conversation because even though we're talking about the career perspective, a lot of people who are having careers have children, or you have
mhm,
a career that's around children. And
mhm.
if you think back to your own childhood, you may be seeing some indicators as well. So absolutely, it's incredibly important for us to manage our stress so that we can pass that on to future generations as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think one of the very first points, and maybe it's not a point because we're not necessarily saying we're going to give you some specific points here about stress, but I think one of the mature things to come to the realization with about stress, you can't eliminate it. You can't live life stress free. It's impossible. It's not just not realistic. And so I think the expectation or the mindset around stress is that you've got to learn how to manage it. Would you agree with that, Jessica?
Oh, absolutely. Stress comes on a continuum where there is positive stress, tolerable stress, and toxic stress. So it is something that we have to face on a regular basis. Sometimes stress can produce things that are healthy, have a deadline and you're pushing to make sure you get to that deadline. You got to get somewhere on time. Sometimes that stress can produce something that's healthy, but it's imperative that you recognize if you're experiencing that positive, that tolerable, or toxic stress because like you said, it's inevitable that we are going to have stressors.
Yeah. Yeah. So what we're talking about today is how to manage stress, y'all, not how to eliminate it, because anybody that promises you that you can eliminate stress, you automatically know from a maturity perspective that that's just simply impossible. You cannot
Mhm.
eliminate stress for your life. And I actually think that that is a sign of not being in touch with reality. That when you reading books or you're paying money for a master class or for a coach that's telling you we're going to eliminate stress out of your life, it's a smoke screen and it's a scam, because you cannot eliminate stress out of your life. And as Jessica said, there's some stress that's actually healthy for you. The idea with stress is that you have to manage it. You can't eliminate it and you can't avoid it. You have to manage it. And I think we're going to give you some tools today to help you manage stress in a way that makes sense. So here's the first thing that we want to tell you today as you think about all of these things that are around stress, how to manage it well, how to thrive in the workplace, how to position yourself where you are spiritually grounded, you are mentally and emotionally healthy, you are relationally stable, impacts your finances, impacts your emotions and your mood, all of that, is that you simply got to recognize when you're stressed. You got to recognize when you're stressed. You got to recognize what stress is doing to you. You got to recognize these situations that are happening in your life, because life would want you to just, hit a pivotal moment and then just move on past it. And sometimes you actually have to call a timeout and say, I can't just run past this. I need to lament, or I need to sit in this for just a second and make meaning of this. So the first point in managing stress is that we got to recognize it. Jessica?
Absolutely. So if you're struggling around how to recognize it, there's two things you want to pay attention to. You want to pay attention to what's happening in your life. And then when I say what's happening in your life, like what are some of the events that you're experiencing? And then you have to look at it from your physical perspective as well. So it's interesting we're talking about this. I just talked to a client who had 3 back-to-back grief and losses. And she said, I just had to keep moving and recognizing, that is stressful. If you experience grief and loss, if you experience a natural disaster, that's going to have stress. If you're experiencing, and even coming up on the holidays can be a pretty stressful time for people. Right on the heels of an election, it can be a pretty stressful time for people. So recognize what milestones are there, and then pay attention to the signs in your body. Are you noticing that you're gaining weight or losing weight? Are you sleeping more, sleeping less? This is especially important for women, most specifically Black women, because a lot of times when it comes to stress, we like to explain it away. So we'll say, I'm just tired, or, I got a lot on my plate. It's a thing that it's a natural thing, especially if you're around high achievers where stress is the norm. We tend to downplay its effect on us. So recognize that if you are having some milestones, if you're having some symptoms, and also recognize your unique, I guess you could say, vulnerability factors to stress. So, and one of those can be your race, your gender, your age group, all that good stuff as well.
Yeah. There is such a thing as stress-induced health challenges, stress-induced anxiety, and other kinds of things that happens. There's a scale that's called the Holmes-Ray stress scale. Stress inventory, where they, through science and research, have basically put a number next to what different life events have on a person's life. And I'll just give a couple examples of this, just for people to kind of navigate this. And again, this goes back to what Jessica said earlier, that some stress is good stress, but it's still stress. And you gotta manage it and figure it out. So on the scale of, and then the highest number is 100, the lowest number is obviously 0. The higher the number, the bigger the amount of stress that this life event has on a person. So the first one on the list is the death of a spouse. The second one is divorce or marital separation. You've got major personal injury or illness. That's on the scale of 53. Marriage, even when it's positive and healthy, it adds stress. There's a stress to it. It says it's a number of 50. Transition at work, whether that's layoff or being fired, is a 47. Retirement is a 45. Pregnancy is a 40. Like, everybody's happy that you're pregnant, but there's a level of stress that comes with that. Adjustments in your business is a 39. Major changes in the number of arguments that you have with your spouse, changes in the line of your work, you're going through a career change, changes in your mortgage or your loan. That's on a scale of 30. Children leaving the home, son or daughter leaving the home, whether that's for marriage or college or military, that's on the scale. Challenges with your in-laws, Watch this. When you have an outstanding personal achievement, that's a stress. It's on the scale. This is major, right? Major changes in your living conditions, where you bought a new house or you did a remodeling or something bad happened. That's a stressor, right? Working conditions, trouble with your boss, revision in your personal habits, formal schooling. So you start school or you're leading your children through starting school. And depending on their age, there's stress that comes with that. Moving, changes in a residence is a big significant thing. Changes in your church or social activities. Watch this. On the scale, taking on a loan.
That part.
You got that new car, but it adds.
Does it ever? Does it ever?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely, yeah. It does. Yeah.
Now this one surprised me. And this will be the last one I give today, just for people to recognize it. But Jessica, this one surprised me. It's on the scale though. Vacations are a stressor.
It doesn't surprise me that surprises you, because I can guarantee you all the moms in the room would say, yep, that makes sense. All the moms, all the people who are coordinating the trips. Absolutely. See, okay, here's the difference between the sexes too. Men and women prepare for vacations differently. And then, of course, the role of a parent as well. Because a lot of times family vacations aren't really vacations for parents as much as they are for the kids. But for women, like a guy, y'all go out and just put a couple pair of jeans, couple pair of tennis shoes in a suitcase. We're thinking about our hair, our nails, making sure all our makeup and all our products. Vacations are stressful. Sometimes you need a vacation from the vacation just to get back into, the stream of things. It does not surprise me that vacations on there are very stressful. Absolutely.
I'm offended. When I go on vacation, I worry about my hair too. I be worried about my hair. What's going on?
I know you probably have to pack all those products just for your hair. Absolutely.
This is a biased conversation. I'm protesting.
All the while the women are laughing with me. Exactly. They know exactly what I'm talking about. That's a surprise.
Yeah, no, I get that, right? But and I will say that there can be a certain level of I'll use the word pressure for the moment of preparing for travel or preparing for the vacation, doing your checklist and those kinds of things. But the larger point is that it's on the list, right? That's the larger on the list. And so what we're saying here on point number one is you got to simply recognize what stress is, that there are certain things that brings a certain level of stress with it. And how do you respond to that? And how do you engage with that? I mentioned earlier, Jessica, that our region just survived 2 hurricanes in 13 days. And there's a lot of articles that have been pushed out by, news people and meteorologists called hurricane fatigue. That like after so notice this hurricane fatigue is real with one storm. You can imagine what it does after you had 2 storms in 13 days, right? And so the stress, the anxiety, the uncertainty, all of those things. Jessica, I want you to just for a minute talk about this element of navigating things that you can't control, navigating things that are outside of your control when it comes to talk about that for a moment.
Well, first of all, in my private practice of my therapy clients, that's a lot of what people come into therapy trying to navigate is what they can't control. They can't control their relationship. They can't control, when relationships, meaning professional, familial, romantic, whatever the case may be. I think, with the clients that I really enjoy talking about the fact that we don't have to have control. We are not in control, and that we serve a master that is in control. So I think that that's the first thing is you've got to recognize, who is the one that calms the storms, who is the one that ultimately orchestrates every storm that's in our lives, but also gives us the comfort and the peace that he provides. So when we are recognizing that there are things that are outside of our control, we can recognize that the only thing we really can control is our response to the environment around us. Sometimes we can't even control our thoughts. We might, the thought may come before we hold our tongue, but we can control our responses to situations. Like we can intentionally adjust our mindset towards situations. That's really all we can control. Even as a parent, as a boss, as an employee, you're not controlling anybody. Even if people report to you, you are only controlling your response to situations.
That's so good. which moves us to our perfect segue into our second point. So the first point here in terms of managing stress is that you got to recognize it. The second point is that you are responsible for how you react and how you respond.
Mhm.
And you can't
Mhm.
just throw off on somebody else. Like, you know,
Absolutely.
you going off at work, and then your default is, well, I'm stressed. Well, everybody's stressed. So you
Mhm.
still are responsible for your behavior and how you respond and navigate that.
Absolutely.
So go ahead and talk some more about that.
Absolutely. I think that even in that responsible space, we can start to dissect, if you will, where we learned our stress responses from. So, quite often, now that I have a teenager, she points out where I remind her of my mother, right? Whether it's a response to, she's like, you're in here listening to books and cleaning. You're becoming your mom, right? So it's very easy for her to recognize that. But for me, I have to sit down and think about, oh, this may be why my mother responded in that way. This may be why her mother responded in that way. So yes, we're responsible for it, but we have to look at our core beliefs. We have to look at what is it that's kind of taught us that was an okay response. So for some people, you grew up in a household where it was okay to raise your voice, or it was okay to give people that you love the silent treatment. It was okay, to be passive aggressive, regardless of how you were taught. You have to decide, what are those lessons going to mean for me? What I want to shed, keep, and grow. So yes, it's our responsibility. Do the deep work of figuring out, like, who taught me that this was okay to respond in that way to
Mhm.
stress, or even that stress was allowable to pay attention to. If you grow up in certain environments, it's like, you're too young to be stressed out, or, what are you going to do? You can be stressed, but the bills got to be paid. So get up and keep it moving. So find out the messages you've received about stress and decide what you want to shed, keep, and grow.
Yeah. I think this requires what you just described is so powerful. And yet I'm thinking about people that I've had interactions with, Jessica, and they don't realize that a learned behavior
Mm,
is dysfunctional until somebody points it out to them, or until they keep
absolutely.
getting burned by that. And I think it's
Hmm.
important for the assumption, I think, is what I guess what I'm saying is, the assumption is the audience that is listening to this and watching this, that there's enough self-awareness to not become defensive when someone
Mm,
points out that, hey, you're yelling, or hey, you are responding in an unhealthy way. Well, that's
mm,
just who I am. That's not a healthy response, right?
yeah.
Just that's who I am. You got to take a step back, and even if it's coming from somebody that you may not be partial to, you
Yeah.
cannot throw the baby out with the bathwater. You got to say, is there some truth to this? And if I'm hearing the same thing repeatedly, then there's got to be some truth to it. Because
Mhm.
as my grandfather says, everybody else can't be wrong.
Common denominator. You might be it. You might want to explore that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. That was some wisdom Granddad gave you. Absolutely. Absolutely. Uh-huh.
So number one, we have to recognize our stress realities, what brings stress, what is stress, all of that. Number two, we have to be responsible for how we respond to stress. We have to be responsible for owning our stress and
Mhm.
figuring out what is our plan of action for it. Here's the third one, and this is going to be hard for a lot of people. It's hard for a lot of people because this is actually a learned behavior, I think, and we don't realize that from
Mhm.
the perspective. But we got to learn how to rest.
Oh.
We got to learn how to rest.
Mhm.
We got to learn how to rest. Rest is a learned behavior.
It is. It is. Absolutely is. Not only is it a learned behavior, your perspective on it is a learned behavior too.
Mm,
We talk about grandparents. I remember my grandmother would say, if you slept in, oh, you're lazy like a dog, get up. Like that idea of sleeping in, the idea of women in my family, you had to work incredibly hard. Even my father, like I recall, he was on a sick day. I'm gonna say because he probably is not gonna watch this, but so y'all help me out if he does watch it. But on a sick day, he said, "Well, I decided I was gonna go in there and start fixing some things." I said, "Dad, it's a sick day for a reason. You're on sick leave for a reason." Like, well,
mm,
I'm in here, and I might as well go ahead and fix it. So what the idea around rest a lot of times comes from, what did you see growing up about rest? What were some of the cultural responses to the need for rest? And this is especially important too because a lot of times we see our value in being stretched thin. So rest can be hard. You're supposed to work until you lay down. And when you lay down, you need to be thinking about work you should be doing. So it is a difficult thing to do, even though it's been commercialized now. Now, right, saying self-care, buy this bath bomb, buy this lotion, buy this whatever. Buying those products are not going to give you rest. And I think it's important, especially for us as believers, we have to remember it's not a suggestion. It's not a hobby. It's a commandment for us to rest.
Mm-hmm.
And once I learned that, I was like, okay, then this is a commandment that I must do it. I had to explore the reasons why I wasn't doing it.
Ooh, so good.
Mm-hmm.
What are the reasons why I'm not doing it? Have I made a god out of myself, or an idol out of my work, or have I thought too high of myself that this job or this function can't work well unless I do it, right? Or that ego will mess you up every time.
And really believing that you're the only person that can do it. If I don't do it, or there's only one way of doing it. This is because I shouted out moms before. I'm gonna step on some moms' toes in believing that there's only one way to do it, and if I don't do it, it's not gonna be done the right way. The proper way, whether it's the way the towels are folded, the way the food is put in the refrigerator. We can stress ourselves out on some meaningless things that have nothing to do with the kingdom of God, but it has to look just the right way. And then before you know it, you went downstairs to get a bottle of water, and you're cleaning the kitchen, you're moving things all around, because you don't know how to rest. Rest is not just a laying down; it's also an internal condition that we have to learn how to practice on a regular basis.
Yeah, I saw a quote, Jessica, one time that said, and I wrote it down so I wouldn't misquote it, but the quote said, "If being busy is your drug, being still will feel like death."
I promise you. Oh, I need to put that somewhere. That's probably, that would be a really great on a mug somewhere. I like that. I like it a lot.
What?
And it's so very true. When I work with my clients, that one of the things with rest, and I say it's internal condition, is you have weak boundaries. And if you have weak boundaries, rest is going to be impossible for you.
Weak.
And I say that because I remember
weak boundaries. Say more.
Weak boundaries are the antithesis to rest. It's the antithesis to rest, because if you are the person that doesn't know how to say no, or you think saying no means that you're being mean, if you're the person who, if you have people around you who use fear, obligation, and guilt to control your behavior, and you don't know how to establish a boundary, I promise you're shaving years off of your life. And so one of the things that I often tell my clients is, here's a test for boundaries, is can you take at least 2 15-minute breaks in your day where you don't touch your phone, you don't touch your computer, you don't do anything. And the look on people's faces, 15 minutes. Oh my goodness. And when they do it, they typically, the first couple times they do it, they fall asleep because their bodies are so wound up. They don't know what to do if they're not doing something. So if rest is a struggle for you, please, please, please check your boundaries. Check your boundaries.
Yeah. I think that's so powerful. This is not the focus of today, but there's seven kinds or 8 kinds of rest that I gave a list out earlier this week on another platform that I'm on. Have you seen that list before?
Oh, I got to go back and look at it. Like, I definitely want to look at that one. 7 kinds of rest. Oh, that sounds amazing.
So I'll go through them really fast. And then we'll come right back to the point. So physical rest, that's the most obvious one, right? Where you sleep well, you naps, but also is included in that is stretching. So people often, if they're not stretching, then your body, there's a certain kind of rest that your body doesn't get to. Mental rest, this is where you take short, frequent breaks, you journal, you brain dump. So that's sort of what you were alluding to there, 15 minutes break. Here's the other ones that are a little bit harder and more, a little bit off the radar for some people. So sensory rest. Sensory is rest where you get away from screens, where you stop multitasking. You stop doing multiple things at the same time. Fourth rest is emotional rest. So this is where you name your emotions and acknowledge sitting in those to make sense of that and to make meaning of that. Fifth kind of rest is social rest. For the extroverts, this is really hard because this is where you pull back from people to recharge your social batteries.
Absolutely.
The sixth kind of rest is called creative rest, and this is where you intentionally seek out elements of inspiration and creativity to use the other part of the brain that you don't often use. The seventh kind of rest is cellular rest. This is where you're mindful of what you put in your body. So the less living food that you have in your body, the more stressed your body is.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So really
Mm-hmm.
powerful. The eighth kind that somebody added to this list was financial rest, giving your bank account and your
Of
pocketbook
course.
rest.
Give that Amazon guy a break because that is stressing your budget. Back away from the Target cart. Spend some time away from that. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So we have to come back to that, to
Mhm.
those 7 or 8 kinds of rest some other time.
Oh,
But
absolutely.
so so we've
Absolutely.
got you got to recognize stress. You got to be responsible for how you respond to it. We got to learn how to rest. Here's the next one. We got to know how to renew ourselves
Mhm.
in a way that is healthy, because there's a lot of people that they actually add stress to their life by how they renew, because they're picking up habits or behaviors that are actually antithetical to who they are or desire to be or where they desire to be headed. Um, so if you have to have alcohol to renew and refresh yourself, that's going to be a problem.
It is.
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
If you charging up on the credit card to renew yourself or to refresh yourself, that's gonna probably be a problem. So we have to learn how to renew ourselves in ways that are
Mhm.
healthy and sustainable.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
I see you making some faces. What you want to add to that? Talk to me.
I mean, that's Bible. That's Bible. The Bible literally tells us to renew our minds, right? And so
Mm,
I think what's important from a clinical perspective is that we have to recognize that we're going to go through different stages of development. Just like an infant becomes a toddler, becomes a teenager. Those are opportunities for us to renew ourselves too. So think about the phase of life you're in, because a lot of people become stagnated when they're holding on to who they used to be. But this is what I used to do in my 20s when I was a teenager. Or people become depressed when they're like, I have a client who's like, I'm about to be 40, and 40 just seems so scary to her. And
mm.
so it's a recognition when we renew ourselves that it's a development stage that we have to go through. And then you want to get yourself in a space where you understand that phase that you're going through. What's happening with me physically? What's expected of me emotionally in those spaces? So with or without you, renewal has to take place. And if you're
Yeah.
not actively doing that, that's where your skills can atrophy. That's where you could become stagnant and progress slows down. So renewal is necessary.
So good, so good. As you were talking, I couldn't help but think about the fact that sometimes um, resting and renewing yourself, the solution for that sometimes is being able to pull back from the situation,
Oh,
because when
absolutely.
you're too close into it, right, and it's like you're all in it, sometimes
Mhm.
you can't think straight. You don't have clarity of your thought processes and seeing even how to put some order to what you're dealing with. I like to tell people that you see life differently when you get in the plane and then look down on the ground,
Of
right?
course.
When you're looking down on the ground, you can see life differently. Or when you're on the fifth floor or the 10th floor and you're looking out of the window, you see life much differently than when you're just on the ground floor. So I think we have
Mhm.
to do that sometimes when it comes to what we're dealing with and the stress of what we're navigating in our lives as well. So I think that's really important.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. So we got to recognize it. We got to be responsible for it. We've got to learn the behavior, how to rest. We have to renew ourselves. Got two more. We got to press reset. We got
Mm.
to learn how to press reset. And sometimes we got to press reset with our calendar. We got to pull back for a moment and say, okay, I need to reset all of this. Right, how I'm functioning or how I'm operating is not sustainable. It's not healthy. It's actually adding more stress. This reset sometimes meaning putting right systems in place.
Mhm.
So I have a guy that I know who earlier this year acknowledged that he's just not good at keeping a calendar. It's been a
Okay.
pain point in his life and his marriage with his kids, et cetera, et cetera. And
Mhm.
so he was asking, getting suggestions about which calendar should I use and how do you use your calendar? How do I, and all of that. And so in his case, I think what he ended up doing was he actually had his wife to become the keeper of the calendar. And
Okay.
he checks in each morning with the calendar. And if it's not on the calendar, it just doesn't get done. And so
Mm.
he's trying to learn that. But that's a reset in a systemic way in his own
Yes.
personal life. So I just think sometimes when we're dealing with stress, Sometimes we've got to, I think we got to reset sometimes, even as it relates to how much news we're consuming. Sometimes
Absolutely.
news induces anxiety. And if you're constantly hearing bad news or constantly hearing horrible stories, that plays into your psyche a little bit as well. So go ahead,
Mhm,
Jessica.
mhm. Again, another topic that consistently comes up in my therapy sessions when there's world events. I have
Mm,
clients that are losing sleep over what they're hearing on the media. And so I
mm,
think it's definitely something you want to reset. You should be regularly doing a social media audit. When you're thinking about the things that you're listening to, whether it's podcasts, whether you're watching something on YouTube, whether you're watching something on social media, you should be regularly saying, does this still reflect who I am? Does this page still reflect my values? Because it's going to keep popping up, and that definitely impacts you on a subconscious level. And so you really want to make sure you're doing that. Does this still reflect who I want to be? Does this still reflect who I am? And the thing is, you want to do it when it's voluntary, because involuntary resets are the worst. You
mm.
don't want to have to reset and do something different because well, now I can't fit my pants. I got to reset how I'm eating. You don't want to do it, and now you're realizing that you haven't done maintenance on your car. Now the reset costs thousands of dollars because you haven't been doing those daily and weekly resets. Like, you need to schedule those things. I smile when you talk about the calendar because I have a calendar on every floor of my house. And I've gotten my daughter and I said, listen, if it's not on the calendar, mommy does not know, like you want me to remember it. I got my paper calendar sitting right next to me. And I think the other thing is don't resist the reset either. And this is specifically for my perfectionists out there, for my high achievers. Don't resist the reset, because if you don't, you can get into a rigid space and not be expanding and growing. So this one goes out there, not just people who don't have a calendar, but those who live and die by their calendar too. Don't resist that reset.
That's good. That's good. Hey, Jessica, I'm curious. Are you familiar with um, adrenal gland fatigue syndrome?
So what happens, and without me sounding too clinical and too medical jargony, but what happens is when our bodies experience too many high levels of stress, it's
Mm,
literally our internal organs are being impacted, how we breathe are being impacted, the neurons in our brains are being impacted. So things are getting pruned away, things are atrophying,
mm,
and the spaces in our brain that say we're in danger when they're overworked literally show up as PTSD symptoms. And that's what that adrenal gland is. It's like, when someone says, oh, I was running off of adrenaline, like you cannot do that on a day to day, day in and day out basis without your body responding. And
mm,
so
mm,
you're having all of those hormones that are not good for you. You want, you shouldn't have, but some dopamine hits are good, things that make us smile, oxytocin when we're hugging somebody and we're getting those hormones. But when you get those cortisol levels that are higher and that part of your brain is always saying danger, your body literally begins to break down. And your symptoms will mirror that of PTSD, depending on what the catalyst to it. Absolutely.
and she said, I don't want to sound too clinical. Whatever.
You're stressed out. Put it that way.
Yeah.
Your body gonna start to show you stressed out.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
I think one of the takeaways from what we just described, or what Jessica just described, and the reason why I bring up the adrenal gland fatigue syndrome is because that fatigue syndrome comes from prolonged exposure to stress, right? Where there's never a release,
Mhm.
never a reset, never a renewing that's happening, never a point where you're recognizing what's happening. You think, oh, well, my blood pressure is just high because I'm eating the wrong thing. You change your diet, but you don't address the stress, right? Or you're
Mhm.
dizzy and nauseous, or you're losing feeling in your extremities, and you're going to
Mhm.
all these specialists, but you never deal with the stress, and that's a problem,
Absolutely.
right? You gotta, depending on what you got going on in your life, or what has happened in your life, or how you're making meaning of it, you've got to deal with the stress. And I think there's a lot
Absolutely.
of people who are Superman and Superwoman, and they are not acknowledging the stress that is in their life or that is on their life, and how to
Mhm.
manage it and how to deal with it. And what I think the benefit for people that are listening to this today, will listen to this later, is what we're trying to convey to you is that you're not meant to stay under prolonged periods of stress without a reset. It's not helpful.
Absolutely.
It's not helpful.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Go ahead, Jessica.
And I was just saying, the thing is, I like the order you put things in, because you have to recognize it in order to reset it, in order to know like what needs to go. And then you have to even reset your perspective on what's healthy, because this is something that really happens too. In full transparency, there was something that happened when, you get around those high achievers. You hear people who say, "I only got a few hours of sleep last night," and that becomes the norm. Or you're serving on 10 ministries at church, and you think, well, it's a God thing, so it's a good thing, right? So you have to even reset. What does it mean for healthy? Because the other thing is, like, sometimes what's healthy in your 20s is not going to be healthy in your 50s. So reset that idea as well. Or else you're going to, again, that rigidity can kick in, and atrophy can kick in. And so you really want to pay attention to those signs. Stop explaining away the physical symptoms, because by the time it's a physical symptom, it's already an issue. So you really want to make sure you're you're stopping ignoring those symptoms.
Wow. By the time it's a physical symptom, it's already an issue. That's so good, y'all. That's so good. That's so good. I came across this article. I'm going to go back and read it more in depth, but the author was suggesting, watch this, curveball, that laziness also induces stress and anxiety. That there are some people who are chronically lazy or procrastinators, and that creates some stress in their life, because when you match that against their potential, they're not reaching what they know they have the capabilities to reach for, and that creates a level of stress for them.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Because sometimes the laziness, I would say the laziness is something you have to determine, where is this coming from in terms of procrastination. And I want to be very careful, because sometimes people will say rest is lazy. So we want to decipher between the two. Rest is not lazy. And that's why a lot of people are not resting, because they've been told that it is lazy. But if you are procrastinating, all you're going to do is add more stress to you. The bill is still going to come like clockwork. You could be lazy about paying it, but the service will be cut off. So absolutely. Like I'm a fan, I've had several clients say, Jessica, all I did today was lay in the bed. I'm like, well, that's all you were supposed to do today. But those are the clients that are overworking themselves too. So you do want to make sure, are you asking yourself, am I laying in the bed because I'm hiding from something, or am I healing from something? So those are two very different things. A lot of times lazy people are hiding from responsibility, hiding from, all those other things. But are you hiding or are you healing? Powerful question.
Hiding or healing? Somebody ought to tweet that. That's good. Are you hiding or are you healing? That's a great perspective. So we're talking about how to manage stress today, especially in the workplace. Those of you that are professionals, or you're working outside of the home, or even if you're working from home, but you've got busy schedules and you're navigating life and navigating what's happening in culture. First point is that you've got to recognize it. Second point is you got to be responsible how you respond to it. The third point is you got to learn how to rest. You got to learn how to rest. You got to then renew yourself. You have to press the reset button on a lot of things, not just what you do on a day-to-day basis, but the system that you use to navigate life. But here's the last one, and this is going to be really kind of like, that makes sense, right? And that is, you got to learn how to reach for relationships, healthy, life-giving relationships where you can just woosah and breathe. I think a lot of people, Jessica, prioritize relationships. I'm not sure that everybody prioritizes life-giving relationships. And I think there's a big difference, because you can be around a crowd and it not be life-giving, or you can feel like I got to have people around me, but if they're not life-giving and not helping you, acknowledge purpose and acknowledge who you are, or especially if you're a person of faith and you got relationships where these people are not people of faith, there's going to be cognitive dissonance in terms of your value system and how you make decisions. So I think we really got to, do an assessment, do some introspection about our relationships, who's in our circle, who have we given access to, and is it okay for us to continue or repeatedly to ignore flags that people throw up just because we want to be in a relationship with them? I think that's something for us to really look at.
Oh, absolutely.
Go ahead.
And so a practical assessment you can do, and this is what we often do in the classes where we talk about building that support system, is to recognize what relationships you're engaged in. And so what I would encourage you to do is to take out a piece of paper, draw a circle, put your name in the center. And then I want you to think about all the social connections that you have, whether they're at work, your family, your friends, church. If you have multiple ministries, they should get their own little circle. If you have multiple siblings, they should get their own little circle. And ask yourself, what's the energy like going? Is it something that's draining from you, or is it something that's adding to you? And really give a look to that. And if you are a member of a family, I really want you to think about doing that for your whole family, because now you're also taking on the relationships of the people of your family. So if you're a parent like me, my daughter has her own relationships, but guess who? When she says, "Mommy, can you go pick up my friend?" That relationship she has is going to impact me as well. So you want to think about it from that perspective as well. So it's a real practical activity. You can make it fun if you want to add some colors and some nice construction paper, whatever the case may be. But it's a first indicator. And the other thing is, I'm a bit biased because I'm a therapist and I'm a trainer. Is it's time to get in relationships that you feel like people are further ahead than you too. So that's a life-giving thing as well. Not just the comfortable relationships you're in now, but you need to get in spaces where people are doing things that you aspire to do as well. Because if not, you'll be in that comfort zone and growth won't be available to you. So get around that person that you think is a little bit smarter than you. Get around that person that makes a little bit more money than you. Get around that person who's promoted to the space in their career that you want to be in. And we talk about that in your career executive board. So check out that episode. But that's a powerful conversation about relationships as well.
That's so good. That is so good and so helpful for everybody. If you don't have any relationships, that says something too. You need to be able to have, a circle of people that you can connect with. And sometimes, for people that have been burned before or have some trust issues, that's something that you really have to work on, get healed from. Seek out, a counselor or a coach or somebody to help you kind of, to get to that place where you can reach for those healthy relationships. Because there's lots of people out there that are also looking for healthy relationships that are probably in your ecosystem you just never connected with. And so I think that's really important for you to, I think that's really important for you to prioritize that, to think about that, and to evaluate like who's in my circle, and am I a blessing also to the people that are in my circle? Do people enjoy being around me and all of that? And so the right relationships can reduce stress. The right relationships can reduce stress. And that's the point of what we're saying today about this whole point of relationships and how you manage your stress and how you navigate that. So this is what we want to share with you today, especially as we lead closer and closer into an election, as people are dealing with natural disasters, dealing with economy, dealing with work from home transitions and changes, dealing with changes in the in work cultures, leadership changes and transitions, all the things, right? All the things that are happening that can create stress in your life. And so our goal today was to simply show you and provide some steps, not an end all be all, but some steps and how to manage stress better and navigate how to make your life more sustainable and successful. So, Jessica, I'll give you parting words here today.
You can do it. You can do it. Stress is something that can be positive. You have to catch it when it's tolerable and go through all the R's when it's tolerable so that you don't have to get to the toxic space. Help is available to you. It's 2024. There's an app for that. Almost every R that we talked about, there's an app for that. So you don't have, if you are starting with a blank slate, there is support available for you and you can do it.
So good. So good. So this is Callings and Careers. We're here a couple times a month. We haven't been on in about a month or two, just because we were navigating life and navigating transitions there in a good way. But we're thankful for being able to get back and have this platform and do what we need to do. So this is my co-host, Jessica Canty. You can find her at jessicacanty.com. I'm Christopher J. Harris. You can find me at myname.com. And of course, diversechurchjobs.com as well. We're on LinkedIn. We're on YouTube. We are on Instagram. We're on Facebook. We'd love to have you all connect with us there on all of those platforms. And we will see you the next time as you continue to discover your calling and develop in your career. Peace.